that we have this mixed group today.
Yay!
Love it. Having some of our newcomers as well as our outgoers present. So thank you so much for being here. First of all, thank you in advance for serving and for winning, both Terry and Ashley. And
without a runoff.
Without the person at the end of the table is the most thankful of all.
I am the most thankful. And Palmer.
That's funny. That was every time you would see, I don't know, I should go, I think we're going to have a runoff on this one. I don't think so. And so it was grateful that we didn't. So we are going to have the first time at the table on the agenda study. And basically, the purpose of this, I won't mention that IU won the game yesterday because that's just, it's an alumni, that's not something they can bring up in an agenda study. So I want to go right immediately to the agenda study. And the purpose of this meeting is not to have a commission meeting. The purpose of the agenda study is to overview what is going to be involved in the commission meeting. So the pull and the highlights from this meeting are really always the things that are new and that are coming in terms of where we should want to probably spend more of our time. There is a tendency to want to turn an agenda study into a commission meeting sometimes, a discussion. So brevity in questions, overview and flight on this, but enough answers to know that if I got to the meeting on Monday, I would be satisfied that I have enough information, or there's this issue out here that I think needs to be addressed between now and Monday, is kind of the balance that you want to seek in all of that. We have, of course, everyone that surrounds, as you have yourselves done many, many times, the meeting that supports staff. Being cognizant of their time is an important thing, and sometimes in the meetings themselves, this is something else to consider. I think it's important to shift some of what may be the way the agenda is written, which the mayor has the prerogative to be able to do, to the amount of audience that is sitting out there. And so you might want to shift an item up, and you can, and that can be done by the commission, so that you can help to relieve a room. Primarily think about people's time, just the waiting. And you have sat in meetings yourselves where you've waited and waited and waited to get to that point. And so that's something else that can be adapted, and Palmer's always a great source for that as you go along. The purpose of this meeting is also to be able to touch base with legal, to touch base with Sean and the city management team on things that are you want more of their input on in advance to be able to get. So this is the great piece for that without prolonging it, which I'm doing right now. So let's get started. And as we look at this, we start at 9, of course, on Monday, and then this is going to be at the RP Funding Center for this particular meeting because of the sine die that we will do right after we weigh in. And so what we'll do is the approval of minutes, then we'll have some proclamations.
And just procedurally, the Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Music is going to present those, given that you're the recipient of one of those. So.
Oh, okay. Very good to know that. That's another reason we have these meetings. And then we'll have the motion to adjourn. Then that will be the new commission immediately starting, and then taking the oaths, which is going to be very fun to see and watch. And to which I have Gary, congratulations for you both.
Thank you. I would just, if I could, do you mind if I just to kind of set the stage for Monday and help things hopefully be a little orderly, is we will be in the Hollingsworth room, so that's where we will be at RP Funding. That room is being set up this morning. City management will be doing a walkthrough when we're finished here. And then just kind of then in the order of things, as Palmer mentioned, the Mayor Pro Tem is going to do a couple of proclamations. And then after the motion to adjourn has been approved under sine die, that's when the mayor and Commissioner Reed will then leave the dais. And so following that, when we get to the oath of office, there's going to be 2 different ceremonies that will be performed. The first one will be the 4 commissioners, and Kelly, there'll be a table, correct, that the 4 commissioners will go to. Kelly will do the swearing in at that table. We'll be signing at that table, and then after that, those 4 commissioners will go back to take their seat on the dais. Then we'll do the ceremony, same process for the mayor. So that's just kind of the order of the way that that's going to be conducted on Monday.
Comments to be made to the commission by the existing commission. Like if I have some comments I'd like to make, where does that fall?
Well, it would need to then probably be before sine die, I would think.
Yeah,
So
after the proclamations.
I love when they put that in there, sign or die.
It does sound like sign or die. It's easy.
Because he's in charge of doing the sign die, right? So until he taps that sign die, he's still the chair, so you could do it
Correct.
before you tap the sign die.
Okay.
And so, then maybe, that just thinking through that, it might be better to do that before the proclamations then. If the commission and Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Reed, if you guys want to all make
After the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe, and prayer.
Approval of minutes?
Yeah.
Let's, because we could be sitting down, let's do after the approval of minutes. Approve the minutes,
That's a great
and
idea.
then do comments. Okay.
And then we'll go to proclamations. Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Good,
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Thanks very much for arranging that. We don't think about when we move a meeting to the RP Funding Center, we move all these cameras, like in this room, to the RP Funding Center. It's a ton of work. And that's what the guys will spend the whole day on today, getting that done. So we want to use that when we need to use that, ideally. And this is a wonderful way to use that. Nothing negative about that at all. All right, then, do I continue to go through this? Agenda?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Right, no problem.
I just wanted to provide some clarity.
No, I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Consent agenda, minutes, reports, and related items. The consent agenda items, by the way, when we go through a agenda study, are always the asterisk items. We used to do them all at one time. We now just take them as they come up in the order of the agenda as we go through those items. And those are the only asterisk items, I think, on this one, are the minutes, but otherwise we could do the other ones. At the time we do that item, that's when you convene on, let's leave this on consent or not. And sometimes there's two reasons to take it off consent. One, there's enough discussion necessary to continue. The second is, many times educationally, for the benefit of citizens. And she's a master at pulling those out. You really are, because of wanting them to hear a voice and see. I actually would say these two commissioners have been the two commissioners primarily that say it's something people need to hear. And so just that as to keep that in mind. Equalization Board is different than being on the commission, so we cease meeting as a commission, pick up as an equalization board. That's the very same thing we do as a CRA board, and then reconvene as a commission afterwards. There will be lots of clearing and cleaning. They're on the board.
Right. So just quickly about that, I think you probably have all kind of seen that process before, particularly Terry sat through that painfully through the Charter Review Committee and knows a lot about that. But, throughout the city, there are particularly absentee landowners that live in other cities and states that don't take care of their property. The city hires a contractor to go out and mow those properties, and the city incurs real hard costs in doing so. And so what we do is impose a lots clearing special assessment lien against those properties. And that's different from a code enforcement lien. A code enforcement lien is a fine. It's punitive in nature. It doesn't reflect out-of-pocket costs of the city. These lots cleaning and clearing, you'll see some demolitions as well, represent actual hard costs that the city has incurred. We hired a contractor to go out and mow or demolish a structure. And so it's important that we recover those expenses. So that's what we're doing here. The equalization hearing is the opportunity for those property owners to address the city commission and say that's too much, or you charge this guy that, and you're charging me twice as much. Why are you doing that? That type of thing. So that's the purpose of the equalization hearing. And then further down on the agenda, you'll see we do a resolution also. And that's more of a formal adoption of those lots cleaning and clearing liens, and we'll actually record that resolution in the public record, so it becomes an encumbrance against those properties. And then later on in the year, you'll see that for people that don't pay the liens that we impose, we actually put those on the tax roll for the next year. So we have a very efficient way to collect those costs, which again are out-of-pocket costs. Those are hard costs incurred by the city.
So the farthest out we ever are is a year for collection. And the reason that the resolution comes is later is because you're doing it as making a decision on the equalization based on what's there, and an opportunity for somebody to say something that they would like to meet and discuss, and the why. And then we meet the resolution as we're meeting as a commission for what the equalization board decided to do. Okay.
No, unless you have questions.
Okay.
So that's Patrick's showing you the list of properties, and as you do this, you'll start to see those, recognize those names. You'll see those over and over, a lot of
And
those.
look at how many of them do not live in Lakeland. The vast majority. So these are owners that are unattentive to their properties, typically.
It doesn't make a difference whether that's residential or commercial, correct?
Right. The only time where it might make a difference is if we're seeking demolition and you have somebody it's at their homestead, then that becomes very tricky.
We saw that this year.
All right, anything else on that?
That's it.
All right, discuss the difference between first reading and second readings in terms of audience and presentation, and just overview, please.
Okay, so state statutes require that we have 2 readings of an ordinance. Only one of those has to be an actual noticed public hearing, and so we have a first reading where we just read the title typically. You'll see some exceptions to that. And kind of the purpose of that is almost to serve as a notice that, this is under consideration, and the next meeting, we're actually going to be considering adopting that. Between that first and second reading, we actually publish a notice in the newspaper. But it's per state statute that we have to do 2 readings for to adopt an ordinance.
So primarily, we're doing presentations and questions only by the commission on anything that might come up on the first reading. The second reading is the public getting involved. And the only difference that would be is if we're asking a specified person in a first reading to make a portion of that presentation, which, typically Teresa and Chuck and Brian would decide, not on so much, well, I guess on both really, ordinances and resolution.
And without getting too much into the weeds, there are certain land use zoning cases, comprehensive plan amendments, and larger city-initiated land use cases where we actually have to have 2 public hearings. Your typical procedure, though, is going to be a reading by title only at the first reading, and then public input at the second reading. But for those land use and comp plan hearings, you're going to have 2 public hearings.
One of the things you are going to love seeing is the excellent land use comprehensive planning that our city does, particularly in times of growth like this, because of the way that we help to protect what we want to create. And we are one of the most comprehensive plan cities in the state.
Certified community?
Certified.
One of 3.
What?
One of 3. It's Freeport up in the Florida Panhandle, a designated portion of Pasco County and Lakeland. So we're the one of only 3 certified planning communities in the state of Florida.
And that takes work.
And it goes back to about 2004, and so our staff and the commission and support of all the departments that feed investments into implementing the comprehensive plan and have been critical for over 20 years now in keeping us with the certified designation.
So pretty awesome.
And the significance of that is that the state has reviewed our processes and
What was that word? The Sudokus?
significance.
Oh, significant.
Sudokus to me. It's January 2nd.
That word went backwards.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that, the state has reviewed our planning department and determined that they know what they're doing and they have a very good, system in place. And as a result of that, unlike the other communities, we typically do not have to send our comprehensive plan amendments to the state for review. We skip that process, which is a benefit to our whole community because it streamlines the process. But most communities would have to submit a comp plan amendment to the state, and the state goes through them. Our regional planning agency reviews them, and if you're a certified community, they say you guys have it under control. You don't have to do that. So.
And by the time we get to early March, the City Commission will also be acting on our certification report that we submit to the Department of Commerce each year that shows what we have done in the previous calendar year in terms of land use amendments, land development code changes, and other things in support of or in accordance with the certification agreement. And so all that will be packaged up, presented to the City Commission, and so we'll see, the community can see what we've done over calendar year 2025 to further what we're doing in terms of our planning goals and objectives within the city.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Palmer, could you tell also how sometimes when we step into the quasi-judicial role?
Yeah, so, with any kind of zoning case, just backing up, you really, the City Commission serves in two capacities, as the legislative body that is creating policy, and then as a quasi-judicial body. So the difference between quasi-judicial and legislative, you're creating policy. Quasi-judicial, you're applying policy to a specific case. So with the zoning case, we already have our comprehensive plan amendment and our land development regulations in place. And then when someone makes and files an application for a zone change, all you're doing is simply taking that application and reviewing it against our comprehensive plan and our land development code to determine whether it meets that or not. But the main significance is that you have a lot of discretion when you're establishing policy, when you're acting as a legislative body. The courts will provide great deference to you for those types of decisions. With a quasi-judicial decision, the courts say, all right, well, you got to show me in the record of that zoning hearing, what the basis of your decision was. Did it actually meet your comprehensive plan and comply with your land development regulations? You're not acting arbitrarily and capriciously. So, when you're acting in your quasi-judicial capacity, you have to, you base your decision on something concrete in the record and in the evidence that you're receiving while you're up on the dais.
And I think as a footnote to all of that, when we have planning and zoning, they work through issues in tiny details and maybe looked at something 2 or 3 times. When planning and zoning makes a recommendation to the commission, it's not that we would or should ever rubber stamp that necessarily, but it ought to have a heavy bearing on the decision because of appropriateness, because they've gone through that. Otherwise, this becomes a planning and zoning board. And what planning and zoning have done and all the work before that is like, why did we spend any time on that? Which is not only frustrating for staff, it's frustrating for all those who volunteer their time to serve on planning and zoning. So asking for the considerations and things that bother you about an issue is very, very important. And then making certain those are the issues that really can be considered in terms of the quasi-judicial role, because you don't want to consider and be motivated by something that is not part, that's already been addressed. There's concurrency, for example, on traffic. There's concurrency on traffic. There is, not a reason to be able to do that. If that becomes a primary reason, we're out of our lane. We have to take those things that exist as fact, and then we're really trying to talk about what else is another reason that is measurable, and you want to clean that up a little bit.
Well, yeah, the example that comes to mind is sometimes you'll have a community that's up in arms over a zone change, and they'll submit a petition with 100 signatures on it, and they'll just say, we hate this, don't do it. But that's all they're giving you, that we're opposed to it. That's not a rational basis for you to deny a zoning change. You have to actually base your denial on it not meeting the comprehensive plan, or there's some kind of compatibility issue with adjacent land uses. It's not, when you're acting as a quasi-judicial body, you can't simply just measure the popular opinion and say, they don't like it, so we're going to vote against it. You got to point to something in the record as to why that zone change is incompatible with the existing neighborhood.
I was going to say, and to the mayor's point, that's a lot of times the reason why planning and zoning and even CRA, they'll have 2 readings on that. They put a lot of work into those things before it ever gets to us.
Yeah, Commissioner Mann.
I think it's really important, for the new commissioners, because it took a while for Palmer to, get us up to speed on this quasi-judicial role, because typically these are really, important to residents. And so it sort of feels like it's a competition between the residents and the developer, and that one side's going to win and one side's going to lose. and they're just angry and they're emotional. And so sometimes the emails they're sending, you understand no one likes this, but when you go to visit with them, to be able to say, okay, this will not meet what I need to be able to support you. I have to have something in our land code that talks about compatibility or traffic, or, even with having tree ordinances and height restrictions and sign ordinances here with our comprehensive plan, you kind of have a history to where what Lakelanders have come, to feel is our quality of life here. So, neon green signs or huge signs. I'm using examples of things that would be like, well, people who have followed Lakeland know we went through a very arduous sign ordinance. We do have trees, and developers have always had to replace the trees. There are things that are consistent that make things compatible that you can look at with a development coming next to a neighborhood that could be like, that could be something that doesn't meet our compatibility with our comprehensive, plan. Not, you just don't want more people living in your neighborhood, or you don't want, not have your view, behind your house that you've had forever because it was a golf course. So it's tricky, but if you can talk to the neighbors and to say, instead of just spending all your time collecting petition signatures, sometimes I encourage them to hire an attorney, find out if this is compatible or not, because we can't just like y'all more because you've got more people to vote me in than this one developer has that's coming from out of state to vote, It's not the same as a popularity contest or you're my voice and I need you to go to bat for me and advocate. It's like, how can I do this legally? Because otherwise the city will just get sued if you just do it because you pressure from the community if it's not legally based.
And there's one third unspoken competitor in all of these things, which is called that it's grass, typically. So you're not only competing with the developer's concept, you're competing with the fact it's already green, just grass with trees on it. And so that unspoken issue is what people usually want to protect. And so they don't recognize that sometimes by rights, there's already traffic approval that's up here in terms of cars per day, and that what might being able to be approved is reducing what already exists by rights. And so that's a question you want to ask when you want to talk about traffic currency. Concurrence, what's my word?
Yes. Concurrency.
Traffic concurrency is are we increasing, ask for an increase, which we couldn't do on a failed road, but can we reduce it on a failed road? Absolutely. And so that would then make it a relieved issue, not one that already exists, because then somebody can put something in it right now that brings their traffic count to that because it already exists by rights. Yeah. Okay, yes.
I think what the other unspoken commentary in that debate a lot of times is when do we get hurt? And so do you all ever have an opportunity to explain to citizens when the comprehensive plan is reviewed and when they have an opportunity to speak into the comprehensive plan as to what they would want that community or their community to look like?
Well, whenever we have a comprehensive plan amendment being considered, or for that matter, whenever the city commission is going to take action on anything by state law, we're required to provide the public an opportunity to address the commission and make their opinions known. And it's no different with the comprehensive plan amendment. And in a zoning case, we always have to open it up to the public for them to express their opinion on it.
Is that done through workshop? Is that just done in a public dais where most people are not comfortable speaking at?
It's typically done at that second reading of the ordinance, the public hearing, the notice of public hearing.
However, there are times, especially when there might be, proposed development that can be controversial, where we will oftentimes suggest with the developer that they may hold a community meeting, and then there's some interaction between the developer and the citizens or the residences, which is not really then managed by staff, but there are those opportunities that occur as well. And then to your points, there are things like with comprehensive planning and the like, where sometimes there will be, a workshop that staff might have with residences so that we can, hear some feedback to things that are being proposed as well.
And another thing that you can do is, if you know that there's some real concern by citizens but people are afraid to speak at the second hearing, find a good speaker and a group of people and friends that can take that point and communicate it and, to reduce it to the 5 minutes. Sometimes if there are going to be many of them, that gets reduced to 3 minutes, and let them be that person. What are you thinking about, Commissioner Coney?
most of the time they don't have problems finding people to speak.
I saw the smile.
Learn that fast already.
Well, after 2 marathon meetings last month.
Yes, sir. What are you thinking?
That's a new record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, and just real quick too, is that there are also opportunities, each, starting about 7 years in, we'll go through and begin the process of doing an overall update to our comprehensive plan as well. And that takes usually 2 to 3 years, with a lot of public engagement, coordination with other entities like Lakeland Vision, the county, other groups on a full update that then restarts the clock on that 10-year horizon on the comprehensive plan. And so there's also additional opportunities for public input and engagement outside of a particular case that the commission is having to consider at a given time. And that's where we get a lot of feedback in terms of overall kind of bigger picture growth concerns, or infrastructure concerns affecting the entire city. And of course, a lot of what I think what the public sees too is just as much as we've seen a lot of growth in Lakeland itself, the growth throughout Polk County and Central Florida has been so much higher. And those are folks that travel through Lakeland. They're coming to work in Lakeland. And so that's a balance that we have to, and part of our communication to the public is that there are things that we can control and we can plan for within the city, but also we have a lot of coordination with our partners outside of the city because a lot of what's happening around us affects what the public sees in terms of cars on roads or, other things that, aren't specific to a zoning case or a land use case. But those major comprehensive plan updates, and we're probably a year out from starting the next update to the 2040 plan. And so there's going to be a lot more the public will have to be able to engage with staff and you and the overall community.
Commissioner Mann.
One last roundup. So what I would encourage, because early on there was one second hearing where there were some folks who came up, and you may remember, and opposed to something, and I was like, what? This can't be the first time hearing about that. This is supposed to have gone through, potentially planning and zoning, or at least, 2 weeks ago we would have had a reading. So when the mayor's talking about, we are so lucky that we have these agenda studies, because often it's like, okay, now what's coming? And then hopefully people who are following or care, we've got the weekend to talk to people. If I get one email, I'm like, okay, is this one person? Is this the HOA president? Is this one person who's, their neighborhood liaison? What does this voice represent? One disgruntled person, or is this I better check into this? So it's you talk about it on Friday, you ask the questions that you need to know. You have the weekend for people and then to say, listen, go rewatch the agenda study. Listen to what we said. Do you understand it fully? If there are more questions you want me to ask, I'm your voice. Do you need me to ask some things on Monday? And then that next week you get maybe some more emails. And you're like, wait a second, this is a bigger deal. People are following this. Then I'm going to take that week to go visit their community and talk to the neighbors and to say, okay, in your emails, you're saying this is not going to work. Your understanding of what a multifamily is not today's multifamily. We've got, people, executives live in an apartment. People live longer in apartments. There was a lot of that at first. They just didn't want a multifamily because they thought it was going to bring crime into their neighborhood. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't use that. So you're getting kind of what their sentiments are. You're finding out that they, love their green space or their habitats or their lakes or what is their passion. And then you can kind of say, let's coalesce around these things. These would be more beneficial for you than just saying this at the meeting. You can say this with the loudest voice, but it won't matter. But if you say this, and even a small voice, it could matter because it's legal. So you have this time. Some places, I think, have their public meeting at the first meeting, which I love how we do the second, because people don't know about it, and then they can't talk at that second meeting once they finally know about it, and they feel like their voice is taken away. So it's up to us. We're the elected, right? So we're supposed to be the voice of the people. We're supposed to find out what they think, how they feel. We can't do everything they want, but we can help knowing what staff and what's legal. We're supposed to be that little liaison and bridge to say, let me help you. Like, maybe you'll still have to have it, but you can have a larger landscape buffer. You can have lower heights. There are things we can do because we have done all this work with our comprehensive plan, but only if we can talk about it and only if we can work together instead of you're just going to vote me out if I don't vote for your, on your side. So
You
that I
can't
think
believe
is.
how many times you have been voted out by the time 4 years goes by.
I mean, everybody just wants to say, I'm going to vote you out. You're like, okay, well, I mean, that is.
You may have voted out before you got sworn in.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I think there's a good point to Commissioner Lalonde, because we have to recognize this is more of a cancel culture orientation than we have ever had in America. So the absence of civility makes it easy to hide behind my silo and yell at you. Whereas it takes time to understand. It takes time to listen. And the decision-making that makes this commission such a rich experience is how we waft ourselves into the middle with all the input that we are able to hear to get things done. Because when we get to the left or when we get to the right on some of these issues and decide to polarize, we don't get anything done. And so it's listening well and trying to think, how can we get to a solution in that, given the fact that we have such talented staff already behind us having planned so well. So it's pretty exciting. Any other comments?
Yeah, just one other point to make with all this. You can tell from the comments being made that there's a lot of communication going on between the public and our commissioners outside of our public meetings. And state law does allow that. And you hear about ex parte communications and how that's a bad thing. But our state law does allow that to occur, and some jurisdictions say, no, you can't do that. I don't know how they police that, but we have adopted a resolution back in the 1990s, actually, that says that we're going to allow our public to have ex parte communications with our commissioners. The only trick about that is okay, it's fine to lobby a commissioner, but if you don't put something in the record, again, back to the quasi-judicial thing, I mean, when you get to the actual hearing, you got to have evidence in the record for the commission to base its decision on. The fact that you talked to somebody in private or sent an email is not evidence.
Hasn't happened in the meeting. So that's what you're making decisions on. Somebody's timer is going off on the table. I think, okay, good. That was a good coincidence. All right, then let's go through C1.
All right, I think we're at annexation of lands by the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. And so this is to be distinguished from annexation of lands into the city limits. This is a different thing. This is simply a property that's already within the Lakeland city limits, being annexed into the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District and being subject to their ad valorem tax. And for this specific one, Chuck's pulled up the map, and you want to go through this one where it is?
And so we have a policy in the comprehensive plan that requires a developer, if they need water or wastewater service, to submit a request to Lakeland Area Mass Transit District Board of Directors to bring the property into its boundaries and be subject to the half-mile ad valorem tax for transit services in the Lakeland area. And so the example we have here is that there's a request for this is about 2.5 acres that is at Old Polk City Road, Epicenter Drive. The Amazon facility on the old drag strip site is just to the west. But because this was coming in for development, it's I think it's going to be a truck parking facility associated with RL Carriers across the street. Is that they were required to submit this petition to the Mass Transit District. The Mass Transit District approved it at their meeting a couple of months ago, and for it to become effective and actually be added to the tax rolls, it has to be ratified by the City Commission. And so it goes through the first reading and then the second reading and public hearing process. And then once approved, then it goes and is submitted to the Property Appraiser's Office and is added to the tax rolls. So this is just kind of a small example. We have others, and we'll have, we've got one on the horizon. It's about 2,000 acres. It will be coming to the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District Board, ultimately coming to the City Commission for ratification. These happen about 4 or 5 times a year on average. But over the past 10 years, we've added somewhere around 1,000, 1,500 acres into the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District, which ultimately helps fund transit services. And that's kind of the basis of what helps the Citrus Connections operations for mass transit in Lakeland.
Right. Any questions on that? C1.
All right, C1, this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with quasi-judicial hearings. This is a contentious zoning matter that they have actually already now gotten their zoning approval for the latest version of that plan. We are working on a development agreement with the developer to provide for the dedication of right-of-way to, fix the transportation system within that development. And so there's a lot of things at play there. Under state law, we cannot hold a developer responsible for existing transportation deficiencies in the community. So, I mean, there's already obviously development of, a fair amount of homes in the Wedgwood area. And there are already some problems that need to be addressed, and we can't hold the new developer responsible for fixing existing deficiencies. So part of this development agreement is trying to figure out what percentage is the new developer responsible for, what's an existing deficiency. So that's one of the things we're still in conversations with the developer on, as well as what land they're going to donate, what's the value of that donation, and how does that affect their requirement to make financial contributions to the transportation improvements that are necessary. So it's complicated, and we're having a lot of conversations with the developer. So we're asking for another continuance of that. That's not ready to go for the 5th.
And that's primarily the reason why.
So all those issues are still being worked out.
Exactly.
Okay, and this is an example too of an area that is complicated because of things we're already doing and the development itself. All right, so we have no CRA item 7, so that brings us to City Manager 8.
All right, good morning. There are 4 items under the City Manager section. The first item is related to a purchase order with Allen J. Fleet Sales. This is for the early replacement of 4 K9 Pursuit SUVs, and then a corresponding appropriation and increase in the Fleet Management Vehicle Replacement Fund. Basically, what's happening here is we have 4 K9 vehicles that are scheduled for replacement in fiscal year 27. So this is advancing that. And really what's happening is that we have in our K9 fleet pool, we have 3 vehicles that are loaner vehicles. 2 of those vehicles are now old and inoperable, and then there's one other loaner vehicle that's not in very good shape, just again based on wear and tear and usage. And so what we're wanting to do here is go ahead and purchase 4 new vehicles for the K9 units. Those 4 vehicles will go out to the front line, and the 4 vehicles that are already out on the front line will then become the 4 that we'll have in our fleet for the loaner reserves as needed. And so this would be a procurement through a Sourcewell contract. The cost of each of these vehicles is $86,868, and so the total for the 4 would be $347,472. The funds to purchase all 4 vehicles are available in the unappropriated surplus in our Fleet Management Replacement Fund. So the recommendation and request is to approve the purchase order of the 4 K9 SUVs for the amount presented, and also to authorize the appropriation that's necessary.
Any other questions on that? Yes.
Yeah, real quickly, is the $86,000 for each vehicle, is that whether they're going to be completely outfitted?
Yes.
Excellent. I didn't know if there's going to be a cost.
No, that's all in.
The cage and everything that's included in the vehicles.
Good. Excellent.
It almost would have to have an additional cooler because those things sit idle all the time.
Yeah, there's additional fans and, all of it.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a pretty good price, fully outfitted.
I'm surprised almost. So that's great. Okay.
I had a work group meeting a few weeks back with police department, and big meeting. And this was one of the things that came up when we were talking about employee engagement and what kind of things, frustrate employees. And one of the topics that was discussed was sometimes kind of the backup in fleet when they have to have, police units that are being maintained or worked on and the like. So having these kind of reserve vehicles to loan out should also start to help us in moving through that process and not having not having it take any longer than necessary.
Great. And we have great efficiency in our own department on that kind of thing too. All right, next.
Okay, the next is a task authorization with HDR Engineering for professional services in support of some pedestrian safety improvements, and that would be at Airport Road and also Don Emerson Drive, and this is out at the airport. This procurement for these engineering services would be done through an existing continuing contract that the city has, and through this, the HDR Engineering, they will be providing those design services and also permitting coordination, again, for these pedestrian safety improvements. There will be no bidding or construction administrative services that will be part of the project with HDR. The total cost of this task authorization is $360,047, again, for the design and permitting work, and that will be funded 100%, so fully funded with a FDOT grant that was received and previously approved by the commission. So the recommendation would be to approve the task authorization pursuant to the continuing contract and in the amount presented.
Chris, would you want to make a comment? Because it's relatively expensive about the comprehensiveness of it.
Can you switch? Thank you. Chris Holstrom, Airport Director. So this project we just did a terminal area master plan, and over this area is where the terminal is. Here's the Hilton Garden Hotel. This is the Stay Bridge. Airport Road, Circle K here. So what's the value to this project is actually like three different things. One is just the continuity of hooking up to Airport Road and flow with the terminal with airline service now. The second really big plus that we're seeing is our sidewalk system is now going to be connected so that folks staying in the hotel, if they want to walk to the gas station or the 7-Eleven, Subway, if they want to go over there, they have a way to do that. Right now, they don't, and there is no safe way to get there, but we see people going down Drainfield to get there. So this provides for that. And then the third real benefit is the cell phone waiting lot. There's times now where our roads are backed up with cars waiting for the flights to deplane and passengers to come out so they can pick them up, take them off, and to wherever they're headed. So that's what this is. So we're going to do some design there as a bid alt to be prepared to build that out once we have the funding in place. So now we're just going in, we're going to do the design work and connect this. This is existing apron. It's been in the works for a long time to have that disconnected for this road to come through. And then we'll just improve all of that along to Drainfield.
Okay, any comments or questions on that? Thank you very much. Item C.
Okay, the next item is a task authorization with Jones, Edmonds and Associates. This is for professional design services for the replacement of a Beacon Hill community water main and corresponding appropriations for this work. Water Utilities is planning to replace several water mains around the city, which have been designated as aging infrastructure. The Beacon Hill area is one of those identified project areas in which the water mains are approaching the end of their useful lifespan. The scope of the project will include the development of an engineered design package, also construction of approximately 11,000 feet of new water mains. This will assist us in improving fire protection and modernizing the system. This would also be performed under a continuing contract that we have for engineering services with Jones Edmonds. In its base scope of work, Jones Edmonds will conduct the field investigations. They'll develop a design package, assist with permitting, and produce sealed record drawings upon completion of construction for a cost not to exceed $218,000. Also in Jones Edmonds' proposal, it included several optional scopes of work which will be utilized during the construction phase of the project. This includes assistance with project oversight, construction engineering, and inspection services, and contingency. And I just kind of highlight that because in another item in a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about the contingencies, but this would be for not to exceed cost of $203,000. Therefore, the total cost for this task authorization is $421,000. So the recommendation would be to authorize a necessary appropriation for this funding. And it's important maybe to note that the design will commence immediately upon approval and is expected to be completed within 6 months after the notice to proceed. So the recommendation is going to be to approve the task authorization and also to approve the necessary appropriation of funding.
Okay, questions on this at all? By the way, this reminds me that when we're going through things and you don't understand a question or a fund, ask. You know, this drips off of everybody in this room because this is where they live and work and do all the time. Only way you educate yourself is tell me what that is. No dumb questions. This is the place you want to get educated, you know, so.
What did you say about the 203,000 originally? You said it was not to exceed.
That additional scope of work that could be utilized during construction phase that Jones Edmonds quoted, that would be for a not to exceed cost of $203,000. So depending on what work is needed as we get into the project, that it could be less than 203, but up to and not to exceed 203.
So the two numbers add together, the 218 and the 203, to get to the 421. Okay. But they're segmented, so they each have caps. Yes, sir.
And listening to your last meeting debate, you talked about, for example, stormwater fees, and I think it was one of you two making the point that we can't go to residents and say, well, we're gonna wait on your stuff and we'll do yours later on. With a water main project, I think I heard you say that there was multiple ones that have to get completed. How do you all determine the order in which you are gonna attack in this situation?
Thank you, Commissioner. And as stated, there are multiple water main projects throughout the city. And then it's just a matter of kind of prioritizing those based upon need. A lot of times that can be based on just, the age of the infrastructure. And so, for instance, starting where it's the oldest, I can also be attributed to where, areas where we've had, recurring issues. And so that has elevated potentially in terms of prioritizing. I don't know, David, if you'd like to add into that at all.
Thank you, David Bahan, Water Utilities Director. We have an asset management plan that has identified miles and miles upon miles of water mains that just are of age, beyond their useful life. And so we do prioritize those, or we try to. And obviously the older neighborhoods are on the top of that list. In this particular neighborhood, there is actually no fire protection either. So when we upgrade these water mains, they're all 2-inch old water mains, and so we'll be adding fire protection to this as well. So, as Sean said, when we have a lot of leaks or we have problems in the areas, those usually will rise to the top of the list.
And by the way, you can always ask and look for those prioritization lists. That's available to you. So if you want to take a look at that, just for purposes of education, and funding matters, because we went from a project we thought was going to be $21 million on the western trunk to where are we now? 84 million. Now think about that. And so all of a sudden, whoa, because how can you do this, and where is that coming from, and how does it get phased in, and what can we do now, and what shouldn't we do, and what are other routes when we get into it, because we find that all of a sudden that's too expensive because of something we didn't even anticipate once we got to engineering, which is why things take time. But it is less expensive to be able to, make certain we're doing it in the right way deliberately than to rush into something that we can't finish well. High-speed rail in our country is an example of that. Okay, that's a complete aside. And so that brings us to item D, right?
Yes, sir. So item D is regarding change orders with Felix and Associates of Florida. This is for the North Side Pump Station Replacement Project, and there are corresponding appropriations and an increase in the wastewater replacement and renewal fund that are necessary. This project was approved with a construction contract with Felix for the replacement of that pump station. This was back in June of 2023. The original contract amount was for $7,231,750, and construction of the project began back in December of 2023. During the project, there were unforeseen issues. Oftentimes, that's the case with site conditions and things that are found once construction starts, and there were some of these unforeseen issues that arose, which required several change orders. Of the change orders, there are some change orders that we're going to discuss now, number 7, 9, 10, and 11, that still need City Commission approval. In order not to incur delay charges for standby, as change orders come in, staff keeps the contractor working and tracks the extra cost. Change orders are handled through a change order proposal review that is done by staff and the design engineer to ensure that fair and reasonable costs are included. Then at the end of the project, staff reconciles the change orders and estimates the added cost to the contract. To handle change orders more seamlessly in the future, the city has started adding contingencies to contract approval requests up front to cover unexpected changes. This particular contract did not have contingencies previously authorized. So a few moments ago, I talked about a contingency item, and I said, we'll have some other conversation about that. And so that was explained just there. And here's what we run into. Is that, we approve contracts, and then again, it's not uncommon at all that you go out and there are site conditions and things that were unforeseen. I'm going to give you some examples of that in these change orders here in just a moment. And then it becomes a problem because once the contractor's mobilized on the site, they can't stop work to wait for us to come to the City Commission to get change orders approved, which, as you know, can take, more than a month, and typically it is always longer than that. And so what often happens is then we have to, view that as kind of like an emergency type, change order or purchase order, and I notify the Commission of those when they occur. But, like in this case, they start to happen and they start to stack up. So now when we're coming and having funds appropriated for different projects, we're starting to include contingencies that then as change orders arise, we have that contingency, that funding already in place to utilize for those change orders, and we don't run into this problem where at times we're kind of in arrears approving the change order when the reality is the work's already been done on site because we weren't able to demobilize the contractor. So just some conversation about how we include the contingencies. Now back to this particular item, and I'll just briefly go through what the change orders are related to. The first one, change order 7, there's air conditioning units that are included in the electrical building, and so recently the EPA has mandated that a new refrigerant be utilized effective January 1st of 2025, and it's a small cost, but it is an increase here of $5,000. In change order 9, and this is an example of how site conditions can change what is estimated and quoted for the funding for these projects. So in this change order, during construction, it was discovered that there is a manhole that's very old and is too risky to core a 30-inch hole. And so now we need to replace that old manhole with a new one that was not initially estimated as part of the project. Then in addition to that, based on site conditions, it was found that there's a lot of flooding that we have that occurs on this site that comes from US 98. And so in order to mitigate that, we've had a drainage swell that was added to help hold that water or divert that water so it doesn't flood the site. And then lastly, there were also some potable water and electrical modifications that were needed as part of the project. And so the total amount for that particular change order was $292,026. Change order 10, this one, Felix and Chastain erred in some design and for the construction of a manhole that we call manhole A. And so the total cost related to these errors is $90,000. That is being paid for by the two contractors, by Chastain and by Felix. They'll both be paying $45,000. So this is just a pass-through. It is an increase to the cost of the total project, but the contractors are paying for those changes based on some error in their work. Change order number 11 is that during construction of the new pump station, Again, this is back to sometimes site conditions that you may find that you did not estimate or were not estimated in the project. And in this particular one, an old 18-inch force main, which had been abandoned and was not documented, did not show up on city records, but it was found to be in conflict with the installation of the new manhole. So approximately 170 feet of the old force main had to be removed, and the cost of that work was $47,606. So the change orders amount to $344,632. However, after the city receives the pass-through reimbursement from Chastain Skillman, as I mentioned, and Felix for the $90,000, $45,000 each. Since the city has remaining project funds available on this project in the amount of $213,102, the total impact to the city for the change orders we've discussed is $131,530. And so we will need an appropriation for that. So the recommendation will be to authorize an increase to the purchase order in the total amount of $389,632, and then the appropriation and increase in revenue for the amount that exceeds what was budgeted in the project, which is $131,530.
Okay. Any questions on that? Yes,
So
Commissioner.
it says, you said 45,000 each, but there's just one 45,000 credit.
So
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think what's happening there is that one of the two contractors here is going to pay the other, and then the other is simply they're not going to
Charge for
bill for their $45,000.
I can help with that.
David, can
So the contractor is taking his $45,000. He did the work, so he's going to, he's eating that cost. And then the other $45,000 is coming from Chastain Skillman, is going to be paid to the city. That will be added to our contract. So it's just a pass through. It's not adding any. So we're being reimbursed from Chastain Skillman. In fact, I think we've already gotten the check. We just have to add it to the PO. Therefore, we have to have it on this request.
The other one's just not charging us.
Correct.
45.
Yes.
as an aside, can you also talk about your approval level of expenses?
My approval level is $100,000. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are times where we run into emergency purchase needs. And so, if we have a scenario like that, then there is authority to do that. And when that occurs, then I will typically notify, usually by email, the city commission that I've needed to approve an emergency purchase order, and then there'll be an explanation as to why. There are times where emergency purchase orders may be de minimis, and in those cases, I may not notify the commission, but if it's substantial, then I always send an email so that the commission can be aware, and again, with an explanation as to why.
And the utilities are where that happens, LE and as well, all of a sudden you run into $1 million oops. And so those don't happen very often.
And that's a good point to make, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we're very careful about that and obviously would prefer not to do that. And so that has brought up a conversation in the last year, kind of, again, related back to the contingency discussion we had a moment ago. There are times where I've needed to issue what we call emergency purchase orders because, again, we couldn't stop the contractor from doing the work on site. And I've had a problem calling that an emergency. That's not necessarily the way we want to classify an emergency, and that's why these contingencies now should help us reduce the times that's needed. And instead it should be for true emergencies, just things that were happened in the moment, could not be accounted for, and but has to be, we've got to restore water service or something like that. It's an emergency.
Commissioner Drummond.
When I hear appropriations, in my main mind is framed as our Senate debating on what to agree upon to appropriate into a budget. But here, in these moments here, these are things that you need in order to continue projects. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Yes.
And you might comment.
They're not debatable.
Well, so like for instance,
it's 131, and if you don't give it to me, this project's not getting done.
Correct. And so what's happened here is, and we've mentioned it in a couple of these now, going even back to the vehicles, is that we may have surplus funding in a particular funding account. And so because we didn't have the fund, included in the project, we're now needing to pull from the unappropriated surplus and increase another line item in the budget in order to pay for that specific amount. But to your point is, yeah, this is we have to have it to get to finish and complete the project.
Because we run financially strong with surpluses, then our bond rating is so high. You might talk about unappropriated surpluses and what you use to protect those as our finance director.
What about a new car?
Well, you might want to talk about how we use unappropriated surpluses and why they exist in that.
Sure, unappropriated surpluses are reserves. Okay, it's your savings account that's not budgeted is really what it is, right? And depending on the fund, we track it. We have to account for it with the auditors, so forth. But say, for example, with like electric, with the water utilities, with the general fund, that's what the rating agencies look at, is one piece of a giant matrix of how they evaluate us as an organization on our different ratings. We're rated with the general government, we're rated with like electric, or we're rated with water, wastewater, right? So everything that's not water, wastewater, or like electric falls under the general government, right? So part of that is maintaining the proper days cash. I hear that referenced a lot especially for the general fund and for like electric and so forth, right? But the appropriation portion, Sean's right. It's just the department coming through, and I say coming through, they then there's a process behind the scenes before it ever gets to this agenda item for any of you to see. It goes through purchasing, it goes through legal, it goes through finance for our different pieces of that. Are there monies available? Is the language correct? Are we also having to increase the budget on the revenue side as well, right? So all that's done ahead of time with the idea that this is exactly what is needed to get it done. So to your question, yes, we'll see it in other areas where they're negotiating, right? Well, this is what all the experts around the table have figured out is exactly what's needed. And they've probably, Mr. Bahan has been questioned by not only his finance expert within his department, but then it's getting through all the other gyrations of folks from Ashley to whomever to myself to get to the point where, yep, this appropriation is exactly what we need. It's not more than what we need. Right, so I don't know if that helps.
No, that's wonderful. And I think it's so important. The gates are tall, and that's good. And that's no differently than our own homes, And so otherwise you don't have that. And we have cities all over this country that are bankrupt, in terms of negative.
And I just add that what's nice about it, the gates are tall, but it's a well-oiled machine in that people see that request come in. Bam, somebody's on it right away, because we don't want to be a hindrance to it getting through the process so that it gets to the city manager's office in time so they can then vet it with legal to make sure that it's on that very next commission meeting, right? So there are a lot of folks looking at it, but it's an immediate look, which I think is very important, that it doesn't become a 1-month process versus a 2-week process.
And the reason to take the time on that is these are big numbers. When they come through, they make you go, how can that stuff cost like that? But you just remember that's how well it has been vetted to give you some confidence. It doesn't keep you from asking the question. It doesn't keep you from saying, could this be not in a project like this, but could some future expense, could this be delayed somehow? Is there a reason if we do delay it, it's going to become even lots more expensive? In our environment today, certainly that's true. Sometimes redesign or thinking about things a different way can create savings, and that's good too. So it's complicated. And so many times we want to yes, no, 1, 2, kind of answers in scenario. And there's 7 things that have to be considered, and that's how do we work all those things together. And that's the beauty of what you get to do.
And when you think about those big numbers, I mean, like, just like in this one, this is a good one to point out because, we're talking about, change orders and a PO that amount, up to $389,000. But, frame of reference, though, I mean, this is a north of $7 million project. And then we go through, like we did today, the reasons for that, and in these cases, as explained, these were just unforeseen things, site condition type work, the manhole, that had to be replaced, the main that we found that, was not reported, changes in EPA since we did the contract, out back in 2023 on this one, those are just reasons. So when you think about what those changes are for, and you think about, yes, $390,000 sounds like a lot of money, but as a percentage of north of $7 million, it just gives you a kind of a better frame of reference in terms of it's really not excessive.
For all of us who have remodeled in our own homes, we know we're running into something we did not anticipate. You still finish the job. Okay. Thank you. I apologize for some of this being maybe seeming a little remedial or educational, but these are things I know that I wish I had a quicker pickup on originally when I first started as a commissioner. Okay, so then, City Attorney, first reading.
Yes, so the State's Growth Management Act requires that the city adopt at least a 5-year capital improvement plan that identifies the different capital improvement projects that we need to complete in order to maintain level of service standards for roads, water, wastewater, et cetera, in the city. The Growth Management Act requires that we update that 5-year plan on an annual basis. So that's what this is to identify the various capital improvement projects in the next 5 years. Chuck, do you want to address anything further on that?
I'll just add that a lot of the conversation this morning really ties back into exactly what we're talking about with the capital improvement element. The comprehensive plan was last updated in 2021. We have periodic updates, small scale, large scale land use amendments generally that are development driven. We have other text amendments that are updated occasionally to address requirements from the Florida legislature. This is something that we have to do annually, as Mr. Davis noted. This is different than those other map and text amendments for the comprehensive plan, and really is just intended to bring the capital improvement plan into the comp plan. And each of the projects, and the next slide really just kind of shows us kind of an outline of what this is, what this entails. Then the next slide shows the types of projects that are, of course, included in the capital improvement plan that are being folded into the comprehensive plan that shows how we're keeping up with growth. We've got partnerships. The new CIE includes Providence Road. So that reconstruction project that includes funding from the CRA, about $4 billion from the state of Florida, as well as public works funding, is an example of a transportation project that's needed to meet our Vision Zero goal, and has been in production now for about 5 or 6 years. City wastewater, you've heard the Western Trunk Line. That is a major component of the CIE and an increase from the last year's capital improvement element, but also other transmission, water, and wastewater facility upgrades, maintenance needs, other things that we've seen that have arisen over the past year are all factored in, as well as public safety. Fire Station 8, the investments that continue forward there. Parks and Recreation, we've got ongoing maintenance of public facilities, planning for the eventual development of English Creek Park down in Southwest Lakeland. So the table that's included in your packet here just really shows how it's broken out. The revenues at the top portion, expenses on the south portion, shows that it's a balanced budget. And so this is an item that the commission will see each year that really ties directly back into investments made to support the level of service standards adopted as part of the comprehensive plan.
And can you talk, Mr. Finance Director, about the capital improvement plan in the 10 years, and how it gets, what do you do to build and protect?
Sure. It's mainly driven by the departments themselves. It's something that it's been 10 years for probably 25 years. Prior to that, it was 5. But what is a requirement when someone submits their CIP? You'll hear it referenced that way. Is that it's balanced, always balanced. Now that can be, if you don't know where you're getting your revenues, well, then we're going to sit together and we're going to figure out what it costs to borrow for that and what the debt service is on that, and that's what's going to be built in. So if you look at airports or some of the others, they may have line items where there's a large project, but you will see, and it just may be called bank loan or maybe called some other type of funding source, bond issue or something along that line. Down in the expense section, there's going to be the line for the project, but there's also going to be a debt service line as well. So we're accounting for the best that we know what the total cost is for implementing and then maintaining throughout, right? So this is a very good, very summarized version of what's out there in everybody's 10-year CIP by totals. Okay, but they are always balanced. They've got to be. We're required to do that, right? With everything we do, it's got to be a balance.
And so therefore, that's not one project. That's an aggregate of those projects in a given year.
Right.
And that's hugely important in terms of our planning, in terms of our ability to know how we're going to fund things, what we can take on, what we can't take on. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you. I know going into strategic planning, another thing I had to ask a lot is where the revenue stream, like a direct revenue stream for each of these like projects. And so like Mike was talking about how, you kind of understand if you're drinking water, you're paying for water, and then that water that you're paying for, the rates go into the capital improvement for that system. When it says public improvement, that's our public improvement fund, correct, Mike?
Correct.
And so that was our hospital lease that was, negotiated, and then a lump sum, and then we have a finite number depending on the market of how much is in there. And so people will say, well, why aren't you going to do the Munn Park, or why aren't you doing the English Creek? That public improvement fund that used to, you could kind of add to it knowing you were going to be increasing amount based on, the growth of the hospital, now is a fixed number based on the market, lump sum. And so it's basically just maintenance in perpetuity of what we have.
For the most part, yes. That's correct.
So to get public improvement funds, there's no dedicated rate, that we can look to fund those things. So when you see public improvement on this chart, different from, the airport has opportunity to get grants and they have a revenue stream, the wastewater and the water have a rate that they receive and they use the rate to base their capital improvement programs on. I just think that that's a really important part, like to see not just the planning of how we're replacing things, but where the money's come from, and how, if we need more than what we see, how we have to work with philanthropy with our Parks and Rec, or with, naming rights and things like that. Right. I was curious on let me see if I can tell what page this is. It just talks about, like it says RP Funding Center Fund, and then it says that it goes to the Lakeland Center Capital Contingency Operating Parking Fund. What is the RP Funding Center Fund? Like, that's just all, is that from all of the?
Pull that up so I can see what she's referencing.
It's an attachment too.
Let me see if I can tell how it's an orange and white chart before the pink and white chart.
Oh, okay, thank you. So we've got there's a couple different sources for that. The biggest part is the capital improvement note, the 2017 note. That's debt service on the expansion. Okay, those are coming from two sources. One is what we paid ahead of time into the internal loan fund, so that's now earning interest, but that's servicing our portion of the debt.
Which was
the other
$14
portion
million originally. What was that?
Yeah, $14-15 million. And then the other portion of that is coming from the county for their portion of the debt service. Okay, so that's those monies being expended until the note is paid off. It doesn't have the years on here. The Public Improvement Fund also provides $400,000 a year for capital for maintaining that very large physical plant. Okay, we've always paid it out of the Public Improvement Fund. Right now, there's no need to change that over to the general fund, General fund can't take that hit. The general fund's going to see more of an impact because, as you mentioned, commissioners, the public improvement fund monies don't grow, right? For the most part, they're fixed. It's an endowment fund, and it's somewhat capped. We're not seeing the lease revenues grow. And so what's happening is costs for fire trucks are growing so substantially in the public improvement fund that at some point, and it could easily be in your 4 year, 10 years, that the general fund actually starts picking up costs for fire trucks at almost $2 million a year that we're setting aside, right? So, but the 400,000, that's for RP funding that comes from the public improvement fund.
What about that operating of $2,556,000?
Well, that's just their operating budget.
But that's coming out
Oh,
of.
wait a minute, wait.
That's only in this year.
That comes out of the public improvement fund?
No, that's probably the last two payments that we made for the public improvement fund. It doesn't have explanations on here. I'm not familiar with this form, but I'll bet you that was monies that came from the public improvement fund to pay off our last two payments into the internal loan fund for the borrowing of the expansion.
Because it terminates after this 2026.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's probably the transfer in on
Did we
this.
advance that, Mike? Did we advance that payment?
Yeah, I paid it off early from the public improvement fund into the internal loan fund because we had the monies set aside long before even the hospital lease change. We maintained that because what it does is it's earning interest in the internal loan fund. And so when the loan gets paid off, any interest that was earned can then be left in the internal loan fund to help other departments or taken out and put in back in the public improvement fund. But so that was the logic. So I'm confident that that's what those two are, is the last two payments on the expansion from us, from the public improvement fund through the RP funding center to the internal loan fund.
Okay, and then Heritage Plaza parking, it just seems strange that would fall under RP funding center.
I don't know why that shows up under that because it's not. That's the public improvement fund. So that probably shouldn't be under RP funding. It's because that is simply us prepaying the loan on the Heritage Garage exactly the same way. We're paying it off early from the public improvement fund, but that was never routed through RP funding. So I'm not sure how that's probably just put in the wrong line by somebody.
Okay.
And so that should not be up under RP funding.
Well, I know RP's under a lot of scrutiny, and we've been looking at it because people think, well, I don't want money to go to RP funding center forever. I want a new park. I want Mud Park, you know.
Well,
and so when it becomes like they want something, they think, I'm like, well, you have to get rid of a service to add a service. I mean, we just don't have unlimited funds. This, because the dollar figures have been so traditionally high there, it's sort of an easy target to say, well, take $1 million from RP funding center. So that one, I would want to see that cleaned up, just because that doesn't. It looks like it's like a little slush fund there.
We can get it cleaned up. But to your point on that question, Commissioner, the requirement placed upon Sean by the commission that we keep the subsidy, the operating subsidy in the RP funding center below $1 million has been met every year since it was required of the city manager's office. So that's been met. Right. So for anybody that is interested in listening, that has still been met. Okay?
So whatever needs to be switched, so
that's an easy,
cleaned up.
Easy fix. Yeah, we'll get together.
Yes, Commissioner Drummond.
The word balanced budget was mentioned a couple of times by Chuck and of course Mr. Broussard. So balance is one thing. How do we know as commissioners that there's fidelity to the process to ensure that there is not excessive expenditures happening within, as those departments go on and say, hey, this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. How do we build that trust in that process?
We do those in workshops, and we look at project workshops throughout for budgeting purposes. You might touch base on that.
Yeah, so this past year we did that. We had multiple workshops where every department came in and we went through all of the different planned and programmed expenditures. And so typically what we're doing now is we're on kind of a cycle where we do a deep budget dive with that one year. The following year, which will be coming up in 26, we do more of the strategic planning process. We still do all of our budgeting, excuse me. We'll have our workshops related to the budget development, but then the following year in 27, we'll go back in and do kind of a deeper budget dive and have the departments come in and kind of explain what all of those different expenditures and even how we determine what those costs will be.
And they're all capped originally before they ever start that process. They don't know what that increase could be. They got to figure it out within themselves, on what they're going to do.
But we can't spend more on a project that's been appropriated in the budget. So if we're going to go over that amount, we have to come back to the city commission and ask for an appropriation.
Which is what you saw with several of those during the city manager section, where we came back to get the changes in those change orders and the funding appropriations to go along with them because we exceeded what was budgeted for the project.
And Commissioner, if you'd like to, we can do it one of two ways, but those workshops that the mayor referred to are actually out on the website. And so you can actually watch that. And what was interesting was, and when we got done with those, a comment from a couple of the commissioners, Commissioner Music, I think Commissioner Madden, was, wow, I didn't know how in-depth the departments actually go to prove that this is exactly what they need and nothing more. And so if you want to look at those things, I think that's important. It would have been started in probably the February, March time frame, I think, and we did it one per month. We really went through all of the general fund and internal service funds, which affect the general fund. Those are the ones that we went through.
Yep, there was one.
And right, so I think they ended maybe in July or August. No more than August, but might have been July. Yes, Mayor.
Commissioner Mann.
And I felt like that was so important. We had I love strategic planning. And so to be able to give up the strategic planning to focus on the budget. But what y'all will realize is when Doge is happening, and Elon Musk is, going in to try to send emails to fire people and into the, U.S. government departments, that comes to your constituents. They think, well, where's our Doge? What's our stuff that we're going to get rid of? And where's our fat that and so you'll start, they often, at Publix, you're like saying, well, we balance our budget. They don't, we don't have all this fat.
You mean as a customer within Publix?
Yes, as a customer at Publix, I am talking to my neighbors and friends, and they want to bring what they're seeing on TV to your local government. And so to be able to answer them, I can say, well, we are so fiscally responsible, but how much better in a transparent, local government in the sunshine. It took a lot of work for the staff to get all of that organized and put on a chart and put on TV. But now you all can go back and look at those things. It gives you a better way you can tell constituents to watch those. Say, listen, this is all, you go through the budget yourself, and I didn't realize this at first. I went to Kinko's and printed out the budget when I first got elected, and I was like at home and, looking at the pages. So last year I felt like that was so important. And then, of course, we have to see who's going to be dojier. The state of Florida, then they were sending the Doge people to the cities to see if we are, fiscally responsible. And so we can all feel the pride and feel like we know because we're in these meetings all the time. But that doesn't cut it. Like, we've got to be able to have a way to show that, to our constituents. And so last year, having the department show what they do, like, Sean had been telling us and Mike had been telling us, no, this is what we do. They are very highly scrutinized. They have to go through this process. We say no to so many things. I'm like, show us that you say no, because my people are telling me to go say no. They want to go have me go, do
Slay the dragon.
Yeah. Yes, they wanted me to come back and say, because I saw you in Publix, we no longer have the Department of Waste and whatever, and we're so efficient now because you told me at Publix. That is what the electeds, that's our feedback. That's who we work for. They're constantly saying, are you reducing those funds, cutting those wasteful expenditures, and the only way we can tell them conclusively and responsibly is by able to say, well, look, we asked staff, they showed it to us, it took a lot of work. And so in staff, I always tell staff, usually if I'm asking a question, it's not even my question. I know how to get the answer. It's because I need you to say it out loud, because that's what people are asking me out on the sidelines at the Lakeland High School football game or wherever we are, They're asking, and I got to ask, and they need to see it, and it has to be codified in the public realm so that we can show that accountability.
Commissioner Lalonde.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And to that same point, you're also going to hear, why don't you add to this? How come this isn't done yet? Why are we not doing this? And our departments here do such a wonderful job as we get into the budget season. Sometimes I'm actually wondering how they work with that number when I know my own inflationary number for my own business is higher. So it's such a wonderful process. It was very lucky for me, till I got to go through it the very first time. They're talking about how easy it was, and I'm thinking, well, this is just great. I'm just glad it was easy from the get-go, because I got to watch the second one. I think having you guys on board and bringing your own expertise is really going to help, but you're going to really have your eyes opened up. I mean, all the years I've done budgeting through Publix and my own businesses, and then to sit there and watch the city highlight each individual department, that was wonderful experience, but it'll flip some light switches on for you. That's for sure.
Amen. Well, it's no different than home, or if you own your own business.
Yeah.
There's lots of things we'd like to do, we can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, so now what's the most important thing for us to do? We live there. This is where you live. And
Tell me what you want.
however, I got to tell you, you can go to cities in this state that have quit trying, and it shows, versus cities like ours, which protect surpluses, which matters, which keeps interest costs low, which makes plan and requires high planning with cost controls. And you recognize why we can get so many things done, plus LE pilot, and plus the philanthropy that we have in the city that is
Unsurpassed.
across the state pretty unparalleled on a per capita basis. And so this is a unique place to live, and it has to be protected. But the tendency is for all of us to want to kick the dog and say, cut my costs. And you're government now, so you cut my costs. When you lower my electric bill, all those things, when in fact, we got to compare ourselves to what we look like with other entities too along the way, all that happens here. It'll give you confidence as you go. But always recognize that you can get back to someone, and if on something you don't know, say, I'll be happy to check on that. And if you don't know, I don't know that. Let me find out. And they're fine with that, and a lot of that's teaching you along the way. So, what I can tell you with solace is, after 8 years, from my perspective, this is such a responsible city. It is so well respected statewide. Our departments work so hard, almost as owners of what they do, of their own businesses, to hire the kinds of people that want to get a job done, to dream and do the things that are appropriate innovatively, that are affordable enough, and to protect the assets that we have in place, that it is so rewarding to find this department after department after department, and to see the comprehensiveness of our city management team as they work with that. And that I leave, it was probably my greatest surprise, truly, when I started, was finding that was all in place, and I leave even more assured that that's where we are as a city, and with the hope of continuing all that through this great commission that's ahead. Okay, let's then go to
We have a cybersecurity contract that Alex is going to present.
Good morning, Alex Land, back to the City Attorney's Office. This is a proposed statement of work with Optiv Security Incorporated for cybersecurity monitoring, detection, and response services for the city. Optiv will provide managed cybersecurity services, including 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day monitoring, incident response, as well as professional services designed to strengthen the city's cybersecurity posture. These services are intended to provide continuous oversight of the city's network environment, improve threat detection capabilities, and support timely response to cybersecurity incidents. City's purchasing division approved this procurement through a cooperative purchasing agreement as a piggyback through Omnia Partners. The statement of work is for a 3-year term. The cost for the first year of services is $136,986, which is included in the Department of Information Technology's FY26 budget. Cost for years 2 and 3 is $114,046 per year and subject to future budget approval by the City Commission. Total not to exceed cost for the 3 years overall is $365,078. And then we have Phil from IT who can answer any of the technical questions.
Phil, you might talk about how this is different from the utilities that we did earlier, how there's different cybersecurity areas.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Phil Lambert, Assistant Director of IT. I don't want to get into specifics around our capabilities, but at a high level, what we do is we look to segment sensitive areas from non-sensitive areas, and then provide monitoring and response services specifically with this particular contract. Additionally, we use industry best practices, and we rely on industry leaders to provide security capabilities to the city. Very short and sweet. Any questions?
That's a broad overview. Yes. and probably in the area that it needs to be the most broad in its overview. Any other questions you might have for him at all?
So a cybersecurity system that protects, is it separate? Say Lakeland Electric has its own separate IT or cyber versus the city main as a whole?
That's a very good question. There is some segregation between certain systems. Our electric colleagues rely on us as an internal services division to provide certain services, but the specialized electrical they manage, and it is completely separate from what the city as a whole would have. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, so there's, right, got it. And that's increasingly important all the time. And these are expensive contracts. And there's like almost, what else can you do to them? And then once you're involved in one, there are the upgrades through, that kind of thing. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, the next item is a pretty cool contract with roadway management technologies for the installation of some sensors under existing city vehicles in order to do pavement assessments. And I'll turn it over to either Eric or Greg to actually talk about the technology because it's pretty cool. You go for it.
Yeah, hey, Eric Pope, I'm the manager of construction maintenance for Public Works. But our road survey has always been every other year. Every 2 years we have a company come in and do a road survey. Well, now this company, Roadway Management Technologies, they've come up with the technology that they can mount our vehicles, and it surveys our roads every single day when we're driving vehicles through our roadways. Another good thing about it is Polk County's doing a pilot program with them, so they have the same technology on the Polk County vehicles. Anytime they drive through our roadways, it's surveying our roadways also. And out of that, they give us a plan, a 5-year plan to go by. It's not necessarily that we have to do that on our pavement management program, but it kind of gives us an idea for us to review and do final bets on and see what is the best service for our roads for the next 5 years.
If I can add to that, in the past, we've always done it every 3 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, do a pavement condition, and it was kind of old information. As he said, this information is daily information, so we can see our roadways and know where we need to spend our dollars more efficiently than we have in the past. It's a great program. I think Winter Haven is...
Dunedin, Winter Haven, Polk County, yeah.
So there's quite a few cities, local cities that are going into that, so it's going to be beneficial for all of us. We can kind of see how we interlink.
How does it measure?
What it does is it measures through vibrations, different pavement cracks and potholes and things give different vibrations through the system. So it monitors that every single day to find the deterioration rate of your roadways, to see which ones need more attention sooner than some that will last. Even though it may not look as appealing, it'll still last longer through the vibration technology.
And it also recommends technologies to different types of applications. So, you need to mill and resurface this road, or you can overlay this road, or you can put an emulsion on this road. So it provides different applications.
So it's pretty cool. I mean, you're putting these sensors on vehicles that are performing other functions. They're not dedicated vehicles.
Yeah, right.
And then when you park those vehicles at night, it just uploads to the Roadway Management Technologies website, and then they process it all, and they actually can generate maps that show your different roadways and prioritize what needs attention.
That's so cool.
It's $60,000 a year, $240,000 for 4 years.
It's not often that City Attorney Brown says something's cool. It's cool, what is it?
Usually I get to work on cool stuff. So.
That brings us to Utility 9C1.
Good morning, Ramona Sirianni, for the City Attorney's Office. This may not be cool, but it's important. This is change order number 10 to the software and consulting agreement we have with PowerCost, Inc. This is a joint agreement actually between the City of Lakeland, Orlando Utilities Commission, OUC, as well as Florida Municipal Power Agency, FMPA. And altogether, those entities form the Florida Municipal Power Pool. And so the Power Pool has contracted with PCI for this software agreement. This is called GenTrader software from PCI. It's a production cost modeling and economic forecasting tool for generation resources for the utility, for particularly Lakeland Electric. We've had this in place since 2005, and then in 2017, we had another software and licensing agreement for a pool settlement system. So all the entities pursuant to this agreement utilize these services. The purpose of this particular change order is to try to consolidate those dates, because both of those software license and consulting agreements have different terms. So what we're trying to do is have them have the same continuous term, as well as continue through, and the new date will be through December 31st, 2028. In addition, there will also be adding some hosted service storage and computer capacity increases, but other than those changes, there are no other changes to the existing agreement that we currently have with PCI. That term, upon City Commission approval, will have a retro-effective date back to November 17th. It'll continue for 3 years. And then the actual payments pursuant to these agreements would have been effective upon your approval on January 1st of 2026. The total cost for the 3-year term is $2.6 million. However, that's the total cost that's shared amongst all the entities. So Lakeland Electric's, or the city's cost, is $724,000 for that 3-year term. $250,000 of that is budgeted for the first year of the agreement in Lakeland Electric's FY26 budget. And we've got Paul Schintz here too to explain any of the technical ins and outs of how that particular software works.
Would you like to do that, sir?
Come on up, Paul. We love hearing from Paul. We don't get to hear from him
Paul
enough.
speaks a little bit better than I do, but yes, the GenTrader, we do that every day. It disperses the units. What's the economic model to run with the amount of units we have? We have big, large combined cycles. We have a couple coal units still. We still have intermediate size combined cycles. We have gas turbines. We have the MREPs. So all those, units, that software dispatch, says what's the economic dispatch and how we could save money doing that by all three of us joining together instead of running each unit by ourselves. Now, and Ramona also said about the 2017, we went into the reconciliation. They had a program to reconcile the hourly transactions, buys and sells, who's buying, who's selling. So we have that contract with PCI also. And then we have a Gen Portal contract too, 2020, I believe, off the top of my head. And that ties in the GenTrader with all the back office necessary software to make purchases happen, the sales happen, and to streamline a lot of the individual software we had on spreadsheets and stuff like that. So all this, as Ramona said, we're bringing them all together to end at a specific time, 12:30 every year, and to start January 1st every year. So that's the point of it.
And that's because of the need to do that consolidation as a pool, which ultimately is very, very an important part of our stability today. Okay, anything else on the agenda that you'd like to bring up? The management team, okay, anything that commissioners would like to talk about at all? Yes.
I'll go first. Why not? So, first of all, since we're live, and I know that she may be watching, happy birthday to my daughter Dina, who turns 40 today. That makes me feel a little old sitting next to this guy here, but not next to this guy. So, happy birthday to her. Feel a little odd sitting at my last agenda meeting here with you. I'm gonna miss your sharp wit and you always drive for excellence and sort of listen to you talk really sort of good. So certainly gonna miss you.
I am confident you guys are going to do absolutely marvelously, so I'm really looking forward to watching that happen. I couldn't be happier about the election than I am in terms of who's in place. The fact that, too, you got to get here without having to run is really a wonderful thing. I mean, without having to have a competitor, and that's a statement of wonderful support and accountability into who you are. And who we are matters more than what we do. Absolutely. And that's what makes you make the best decisions. Anything else?
I just wanted to say one thing. I'm thrilled that we get to say more things about our departing mayor, who has kept us collegial under very strenuous and often vitriolic, spicy issues that we've encountered, including a global pandemic and monument.
I was trained by my children.
I thought so. I often thought it's because he has 12 kids and he loves them all and he has to listen to them all and they all have a different perspective. And so, we're really going to miss that. And you have kind words to all of us, but, you don't know what you need because you don't know what your time in seats of authority, will hold. And so you couldn't have dreamed, what would be in your stay as mayor, with the things I just mentioned, but you did it all with grace and compassion. And, even when we forcefully and kind of aggressively feel certain things should be done a certain way, just the composure and the restraint to keep that collegial nature, it's really remarkable. And I'm hopeful that our new mayor will be able to do that as the chair of the meeting. But it's more difficult. It always, it looks easy, right? Until you try to do it yourself and then see how you can do it with your own 2 kids or 3 kids, or no kids, and just with your spouse to get along. So thank you for that remarkable tenure and leadership and sense of vision and honoring everyone. That has just been a real special thing for Lakeland. And then moving from the elected position to the staff and to our departments and to our city. I get emotional thinking about you get sent into this office. I feel like today what we think politicians should do, it's like you want them to go in there and just tear down things and shake it up and be aggressive. It's kind of what people put on you when you see them in the public. You gotta go do this, and you're at community meetings and you're like, oh my gosh, and yet you don't want your staff to feel that they are not every single day working so hard to make this city so beautiful. And just an example. I don't know why I'm getting emotional about this, but on my day off, I have a daughter getting married next weekend. I'll blame it on that. So we have a lot on our plate, and also the holidays, and everybody's, at my house. It's just like, the house, how it looks. You probably do too, and you're hosting and all the food and mess and chaos, and you love the holidays, but like today's a vacation to come to work, And I got out, I took off for about 3 hours by myself, And of all the things I could do in the whole wide world for 3 hours by myself, I went and I walked 7 wetlands. And I thought about David leaving, and I'm sad that he's leaving, and the mayor leaving, because I know you've been out there walking with your family. And I thought, we have such geniuses. I mean, the beauty of that wastewater plant. I mean, I am just, because I'm, of course, walking the part that I think we hopefully would get an easement to connect the shrub with the, and it's kind of treacherous on the side that would lead into the Carter Road side, and I don't know if those Eagle Brook folks would want a bike path behind their golf course, unless they want access to it, and it would be an amenity. But I'm just walking all by myself on those berms and thinking about the conversations from bikers to nature walkers, saw some folks walking. And then you get over to the part with the new, and then we're going to the state to try to get money, and then you see Bill, you think about Ben Albritton and how he championed it, and all the people that have to do it. But then you get to this water, and it's just flowing out like a waterfall. And it's, Lakeland, Florida, we're no, Tetons or, friends that go to a lot of places to have beautiful environments in which they can hike and walk. Okay, certainly we're not competing with that, but all of this water pouring in, and then to see this, berm, and to be able to see the outputs into the shrub, and then go into the lake, and then that's just the first, of the 7 wetlands.
It's a blessing.
I was so proud of us. I'm just proud of our city. And I think when people hear you say that you're proud, that means you don't have any work to do. Like, you're not going to go in there, you're not the person we want, because you're not going to go in there and tear down whatever they think needs to be tore down, whatever fat they think we, or sausage we're making in the back rooms, But it just was a beautiful day.
Well, that's a wonderful reflection.
And I just want to appreciate all of our staff in every department, and their science and their innovation and their excellence and the ideas and the sensors now that are going to be on our cars to assess our roads, to hopefully help Heath and his team, keep those potholes out of our neighborhoods. It's just amazing what you do every day. And I thought, it's like you either think government should be God, or you hate government and you think you shouldn't have it, or there's just... do you all watch the news? I have people who watch the news in my life, and they want to talk about it at the dinner tables, and it's so spicy and annoying. And this is the beautiful, I feel like this is the beautiful side of government, because we work with our private sector. We work with our electeds. We work with, it's all hands on deck, and you can see it.
Yep.
Every day in our city.
And it doesn't mean that we don't have things to do.
Yeah.
We do have things to do. We do have needs that need to be addressed, but we're doing that. It's preserving what has been created, looking at what needs to be created, and appreciating the team in place that's doing that work, and all of those elements exist. It's pretty awesome. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
We have a great city. It's going to be a great year. Happy New Year, everyone.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Looking at the swan behind on Commissioner Mann's neck. I was in Orlando this past weekend, and I guess Lake Elo, they have a bunch of swans that have passed. Do we have that problem in Lakeland?
We don't. We have had some media outreach with questions related to that, and as of right before the holiday, we didn't have anything, but certainly are monitoring that. And I don't think they've, at least the last that I had seen on that, I don't know that they've identified yet. There was certainly some thoughts as to what might be causing that in Orlando. Hopefully it's isolated, but everybody's looking into that really around the state, keeping an eye on it.
They mentioned that it may have been bird flu, and when you talk about bird flu, that can wipe out a whole flock there. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it only that lake that's happened in Florida?
Yeah, it was only mentioned at Lake Eola, I think that was.
Eola.
Yeah. So I was just curious, since we're the Swan City.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I do want to thank over the last 8 years watching the mayor when I was sitting in the cheap seats. Now I have to get to move up, but the way you managed everything, and the calm that the way the meetings meetings were ran. I think I can only remember one time over 8 years that you actually had to use your gavel to tell somebody they were out of order to sit down.
It says mark there.
I think I just pointed those marks out to you just the other day, didn't I?
Yeah, that's correct. So, appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, then we are adjourned. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right, young man. Look forward to seeing you Monday. You have a good,
In our lap.